Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's episode, I continue telling you the story of CEO James, Diep, and Little Nee, a story that, the deeper you go, the more you realize that behind its peaceful, warm surface lie layers of secrets that have quietly existed for many years, never once spoken aloud. As you already know, at this point in time, Little Nee is living with James and Diep as their adopted child. The decision to adopt her was initially born out of compassion and sympathy, but over time, the relationship between Diep and Nee has grown far beyond the word responsibility. Diep takes care of Nee with all the gentleness and patience of a true mother. From daily meals, to soothing her when she is sick, to sitting by her bedside every night until she falls fast asleep, Diep is always the first and last person by Nee's side each day. There are nights when Nee wakes up from a bad dream, and Diep, hearing even the slightest sound, immediately wakes and pulls the child into her arms, comforting her with slow, steady motions. The way she looks at Nee, the way she calls her name, even unconscious gestures like fixing her hair or pulling the blanket up, all of it radiates a familiarity so deep that it is hard to believe there is no blood connection between them. Many people who have encountered the two of them have casually remarked, they really look alike, and each time, Diep only smiles, yet something difficult to name flickers briefly in her eyes. Little Nee has grown increasingly attached to Diep as well. She calls Diep mom naturally, without hesitation, as if in Nee's world, Diep had always been there from the very beginning. When she is with Diep, Nee becomes noticeably calmer and more obedient. Just Diep's presence is enough to stop her tears, bring a smile to her face, and even make her imitate Diep's way of speaking or the slight frown she makes when thinking. The resemblance goes beyond appearance, it is evident in the smallest expressions. It was precisely this closeness, along with the growing resemblance, that made James's father unable to ignore what he was seeing. From the very moment James expressed his intention to adopt Nee, his father had strongly opposed it. At first, he believed James was acting on momentary softness, making a hasty decision out of pity. But as time passed, and as he observed the relationship between Diep and Nee more closely, his doubts did not fade, instead, they grew stronger with each passing day. He began to notice that Nee shared many uncanny similarities with Diep, from her eyes and the shape of her brows to certain distinct expressions. There were moments when, at just a glance, he felt as if he were seeing a younger version of Diep herself. And that made him question, was all of this merely coincidence, or was there a truth hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be revealed? In private conversations with James, he repeatedly voiced his dissatisfaction openly. He believed that adopting Nee was not simply an act of kindness, but possibly a deliberate arrangement. He suspected that Diep was hiding something deeply important, and that bringing Nee into their home was only part of a larger plan. Though he had no concrete evidence, the intuition of a seasoned man left him deeply uneasy. James, on the other hand, always stood firmly by Diep's side. He trusted her completely. To him, Diep was the woman he loved and respected, the one who had stood with him through countless hardships. He believed his father was being overly suspicious and harsh. Every time those doubts were voiced, James tried to explain, sometimes even responding sharply, because he did not want Diep to suffer any further hurt. Yet no matter how much James defended her, his father's opposition never truly disappeared. The scrutinizing looks, the seemingly casual yet loaded questions continued to surface during family meals and rare gatherings. The atmosphere gradually grew heavier, as if something unspoken was quietly lingering among them, waiting for the right moment to be exposed. Amid all these silent conflicts, Diep chose to remain quiet. She continued caring for Nee, continued living her daily life as if nothing were wrong. But anyone who looked closely could sense that behind her calm exterior lay worries and inner turmoil she had never shared with anyone. And over time, that very silence only deepened the suspicions surrounding her, making them more persistent, more unsettling, and harder to erase. However, there is one truth that, up to this very moment, no one in that family knows. A truth buried deep, not because it is unimportant, but because it is too painful to speak of, too cruel to confront. In reality, little Nee is Diep's biological daughter. Many years ago, when Diep was still trapped in a suffocating and deeply painful marriage, her life was almost completely devoid of peace. That marriage did not begin with love, but with endurance. Diep lived in her husband's home like a shadow, constantly wary of her mother-in-law's gaze, constantly swallowing her pain just to hold on to something called family, even though she herself was never sure it truly existed. Then Diep became pregnant. The child came to her under far from ideal circumstances, yet became the only ray of hope in that dark chapter of her life. Diep once believed that as long as she had a child, everything would change. She silently endured the exhausting months of pregnancy, the back pain, the sleepless nights, clinging to the hope of one day seeing her baby born, of holding her child as her final anchor in life. But on the day of delivery, tragedy struck. Diep suffered a severe complication during childbirth. She was in agony, completely drained, and then fell into a coma as the line between life and death grew thinner than ever. In that moment, when every decision should have been made to save both mother and child, her former mother-in-law acted on her own, in the most heartless way possible. The woman called a midwife, not to care for or protect the newborn, but to take absolute control over the baby's fate. When she learned that the child was a girl, her disappointment and cruelty surfaced immediately. In her twisted mind, a granddaughter held no value. And with one cold-blooded decision, she gave the midwife money and ordered her to take the baby far away, as far as possible, and erase the child's existence from Diep's life entirely. When Diep woke from her coma, the first thing she asked about was not herself, but her baby. What she received, however, was a devastating lie, that the child had not survived. No details were given. No face was shown to her. Just a short, cold sentence, enough to extinguish her last remaining hope. That shock nearly destroyed Diep. She fell into a hollow state, a pain so overwhelming that she could not even cry. The loss was too great, leaving her without the strength to resist, without the clarity to question the truth. In that moment, everything inside her collapsed. And the tragedy did not end there. After the childbirth ordeal, Diep's body was severely damaged. She lost her ability to have children forever. The news was like another knife driven deep into the heart of a woman already broken both physically and emotionally. To her former mother-in-law, it became an excuse to unleash all her resentment. To her former husband, it was reason enough to turn his back on her. In the days that followed, Diep not only endured the pain of losing her child, but also suffered beatings and merciless humiliation. She was blamed for everything, labeled a worthless woman, one who could not bear a son, who could not keep a family together. In the end, she was thrown out of the house with nothing, no possessions, no status, no support, not even a word of compassion. Her life plunged straight into the depths of despair. There were nights when Diep sat alone, clutching her pain, not knowing where to go or what to do next. The loss of her child became a wound that never healed, festering silently with every breath. She went on living, but merely existing, without hope, without a future. Until she met CEO James. James entered her life quietly, without spectacle or drama. He did not ask too much about her past, nor did he pry open wounds Diep desperately tried to hide. He simply stayed by her side, offering her support and a sense of safety she had long forgotten. With patience, respect, and a love that asked for nothing in return, James slowly pulled Diep out of the darkness. Because of James, Diep found a new life, a new home, a new family, one where she believed the past had finally been laid to rest. Yet within that very family, the child named me appeared, unknowingly touching the deepest, most hidden wound in Diep's heart. And that truth, no matter how many years it had been concealed, continued to exist quietly, waiting for the day it would finally be faced. Later on, in a completely accidental turn of events, Diep and James rescued little Nee. It was not a decision made with prior calculation, nor did it come from any plan. It was simply that moment, when faced with a small, fragile, terrified child, that Diep could not turn away. And James, as always, chose to stand beside her. From the very first instant Diep's eyes met Nee's, a strange feeling rose within her. It was not ordinary pity, nor merely a fleeting sense of compassion. It was something far more intense and profound, so strong that even Diep herself could not explain it. Her heart tightened, her breathing slowed, and her gaze could not leave that small face. Diep felt a sharp ache in her chest, a familiar pain that had been buried for a very long time. Nee was exactly the age her child from years ago would have been, had she still been alive. That coincidence unsettled Diep, yet at the same time awakened something deeply primal within her, the instinct of a mother. She wanted to protect the child. To shield her, to stay close, to make sure Nee would never have to endure any more harm. Many of the things Diep did for Nee were completely unconscious, raising a hand to shield her head at a loud noise, pulling her closer at the slightest sense of danger, or simply resting a hand on her back to reassure her. It all came so naturally that Diep didn't even realize it, until James quietly watched her, his eyes filled with both surprise and contemplation. Diep told herself it must be because she had once lost a child, that was why she felt so sensitive, so attached. She did not dare think further. She did not dare ask questions. Because there are pains that need only the lightest touch to make a person collapse. But Diep did not know that. The child beside her, the one she held every night in her arms, was in fact her own biological daughter. The love Diep felt for Nee grew stronger with time. It needed no reason, no conditions. She cared for Nee with a devotion and patience she herself had never imagined she possessed. Whenever Nee was sick, Diep would stay awake all night. Whenever Nee was sad, Diep was always the first to notice. There were times when just one look into the child's eyes was enough for Diep to know what Nee was thinking, what she feared, what she needed. That bond did not escape the notice of those around them. And most of all, it made James's father increasingly uneasy. He did not only see the physical resemblance between Diep and Nee, he could clearly sense a connection between them that defied explanation. The way Diep cared for me was not like that of an adoptive mother. It was too instinctive, too familiar, as if it had existed for a very long time. His suspicions therefore grew sharper by the day. He believed Diep was hiding something enormous. His opposition became more intense, and he no longer hesitated to ask difficult, heavy questions. To him, everything seemed to be veering away from what he considered safe and acceptable. Caught in the middle of these tensions, James gradually grew exhausted. He loved Diep, trusted her, and could clearly see the sincerity in the way she treated Nee. Yet at the same time, he could not entirely ignore the growing strain within his family. James tried to mediate, to explain, to ease the situation, but the more he tried, the deeper he was pulled into a spiral of suspicion and pressure. Diep sensed it all, but chose silence. She did not want to reopen the past. She did not want to put James in a difficult position. And more than anything else, she was afraid that if she dug any deeper, the wound she believed had healed would begin to bleed again. Until one day, Diep's former mother-in-law accidentally saw little Nee. It was only a brief moment, yet it was enough to freeze everything inside her. With just one glance, her heart seemed to stop. That face. Those eyes. That gaze. Everything was unmistakably clear. It was the child from years ago. The child she had once coldly paid a midwife to take away. The child she had declared dead to erase from Diep's life forever. For years, she had believed that secret was buried beyond all trace. But now, the past stood solidly before her, alive and breathing, with clear, innocent eyes gazing at the world, unaware that she was the center of a tragedy spanning many years. In that instant, all the memories she thought had long been laid to rest surged back violently, leaving her no room to escape. And the blood-bound secret hidden for so many years, for the first time, began to tremble. Would she have the courage to tell the truth after all those years of living in lies? Or would selfishness and the fear of being exposed once again push her into silence, just as it had in the past? That question echoed endlessly in her mind from the very moment her eyes met little Nee's. A glance that seemed ordinary, yet was powerful enough to awaken every memory she had buried deep for years. Old images, cruel decisions, lies she believed time had erased, all surged back at once, vivid and impossible to escape. She understood all too clearly, the moment she opened her mouth and spoke the truth, everything would change. Not only the lives of Diep and Nee, but her own as well. There would be no way back. What she had done in the past, the sins she had deliberately concealed, would all be dragged into the light. She would have to face judgment, contempt, and the consequences she had avoided for so long. But if she continued to remain silent, could she truly live in peace? Because every time she looked at Nee, every time she caught sight of those clear, innocent eyes, the past rose up like a wordless accusation. The child was growing up healthy, gentle, and carefree, completely unaware that her fate had once been decided in a single cold-blooded moment by an adult. And the more she looked, the more the woman could not deny one truth: blood ties cannot be erased, no matter how long they are hidden. If the truth were revealed, what would Diep have to face? Diep had spent her entire life living with the pain of losing her child, burdened by the sense of inadequacy of a woman who could no longer give birth. She had forced herself to believe that her baby from years ago was gone forever, had learned to accept it, to go on living, while carrying within her a hollow space that nothing could ever fill. And it was precisely because of that emptiness that Diep had loved me so deeply, a love she had never dared to name. If she were to learn that her biological daughter had been right beside her all along, held in her arms and cared for every day without her knowing, how overwhelming would that pain be? It would not only be the explosive joy of finding her child again, but also guilt, self-blame, and countless unanswered questions: why fate had been so cruel, why mother and child had been separated for so many years when the distance between them had never truly been far. Diep would be forced to confront a storm of emotions: love and anguish, relief and regret, fear and sorrow, feelings no mother could easily endure. And James? Where would he stand when the truth finally came out? James was the one who had pulled Diep out of darkness, who gave her a home, a family, and a renewed faith in life. He loved Diep with respect and sincerity, loved Nee with the responsibility and care of a father. But if he were to learn that the child he had adopted was actually Diep's biological daughter, that the woman he loved had endured such a devastating tragedy in her past, would he be strong enough to accept it all? James would have to face the fact that his father's suspicions were not entirely unfounded. He would be forced to choose between protecting the fragile family he was trying so hard to preserve, or confronting new undercurrents that could sweep everything away far beyond what he had imagined. Because once the truth was exposed, it would not only wound Diep's heart, it would push the very structure of this family to its limits. And little Nee, the most innocent of all, continued to live her peaceful days beside her biological mother, unaware of anything. She did not know that every hug, every soothing word, every loving gaze carried an invisible blood bond that had connected mother and child for far longer than anyone realized. The silence of adults, the lies of the past, and a truth drawing ever closer, all intertwined, forming a knot so tight that a single sentence could change everything. Would that secret remain buried? Or would the day come when no one had the strength left to hide it anymore? All will gradually be revealed in the next episode. Stay tuned to witness what unfolds next in this story filled with tears, love, and blood-bound secrets buried for many long years.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay mình tiếp tục đưa đến video về câu chuyện của Diep và Diep nha mọi người. Tạm biệt mọi người.